Good day to all. Thank you. My name is Mike Lostelot, and I am one of the three founders at Sagacity Golf. And my job here at Sagacity is to spread the word about benchmarking, forecasting, pricing, and revenue optimization. I'm really pleased to be here today and grateful for the opportunity that foreUP has given us to share some information in our view of the world with you today. So thank you very much. And without any further ado, I will jump in to talk about this concept of dynamic pricing. And really, what is dynamic pricing? It's something that us in the golf industry have known about for a very, very long time. And it started very simply by being able to change the price of a tee time based on certain factors. And whether you know it or not, dynamic pricing has been around for a very, very long time, starting with changing the price by season, changing the price by day of the week, changing the price by time of the day, or even by customer type, right? Senior pricing, junior pricing, early bird pricing, twilight pricing, super twilight pricing, Monday through Friday pricing, Saturday, Sunday, holiday pricing, summer season, shoulder season. The list goes on. They're obvious. Pretty much every golf course in America does dynamic pricing today. I describe that as static. You set those up for the year, you set them up by the season, and they become your price for playing golf on your golf course, depending on which group or depending on when all that's happening. There's another level of dynamic pricing that is happening in the world and has been happening now for probably the last 10 years or so, and it's becoming more and more widespread as electronic tee sheet vendors build auto adjustment schedules into their software, and even if they don't, some elements of dynamic pricing relate to my current occupancy. How many times are booked right now? And does my current occupancy warrant a change in price? There are external factors that go into dynamic pricing that are happening today. That is stuff like, are there events in town? Is there a conference in town? Is the Super Bowl in town? Is the US Open in town? Is the Final Four in town? Is the conference championship game in town? Is there a home football game this weekend? Et cetera. These are external market-driven factors that might drive a change in demand at your golf course, both up and down. Weather, of course, is everybody's. Everybody's excited to try to bake in a weather forecast to their dynamic pricing scheme. Our view of the world, we focus, we kind of categorize all that as really guessing. You're really guessing. You're using your gut instinct to decide whether or not these other factors are going to have an impact on the demand. That's what you're really talking about at your golf course. We take a slightly different approach to dynamic pricing, not slightly different, massively different. And we're really focused on what we call pricing and revenue optimization. And we're actually using the history at your golf course to guide all of this calculation. So we start by collecting data out of your tee sheet to understand the historical utilization of your golf course. And what I mean by that is we know your historical utilization for every hour on your tee sheet. And we use 3 years of historical data to derive that number. We also use the historical booking patterns at your golf course to also impact and guide our pricing and revenue optimization at your facility. And let me just talk a little bit about, the historical utilization and the historical patterns at your golf course. Not every hour at your golf course is created equal. No 2 hours at your golf course are created equal. And if you are in a 12-month market, you can kind of factor on about, whatever your season is, right? You've got anywhere from, 8 to 16 hours a day of tee time inventory to sell. And every single one of those hours actually has different historical utilization. So, you really, in order to systematically approach your dynamic pricing, in order to systematically approach your pricing and revenue optimization, you have to have the ability to know not only your historical utilization by hour, but also your historical pickup by hour. And when you look at that across the year, here's an example of a golf course where 1,000 hours on their tee sheet drove approximately 50% of their green fee revenue. So what we're saying here, it's what we call the 50-20 rule. 50% of your revenue is driven by 20% of your hours. And it's not as easy as taking a straight 15% increase or a straight 10% increase on a season or on a day of the week or whatnot, because even within March in this example, where there are 170 hours represent a top 20% of the hours in that year, even within a day, Friday, March 17th, for example, the 9 o'clock hour will behave differently than the 1 o'clock hour. And if you priced Friday, March 19th the same way, you'd be missing opportunity both on the high and low utilization ends of that spectrum. So it's really important to understand that if you proceed with dynamic pricing and you want to capture the most revenue out of the available inventory, out of the demand of your tee sheet, you need to be able to make changes on the hour for every hour in the future, and that ends up becoming a very, very daunting task. We have 3 key drivers for success in dynamic pricing. They are demand forecasting is the first one. Again, there's a formula for this. There is a very simple formula that needs to be employed to price your green fees dynamically based on our revenue and pricing optimization schemes. The other idea behind our key drivers for success is understanding what is true demand, and true demand can be talked about by removing the constraint of capacity, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if any of you have, like I have, spent time behind the counter answering the phone and booking tee times on a busy week or a busy day or a busy time of the season, by the end of a day, you most likely have not been able to accommodate requests for tee times on a particular hour. And that is the concept of capacity constrained When someone calls for the 9 o'clock hour on the Friday of 4th of July weekend, and the first time you can offer them is 1:40 or 5:40 in the morning, and they hang up the phone because they can't play at the time that they want, you understand the concept of capacity constraints. And so understanding true demand is removing the constraint of capacity. If I could sell as many rounds as I had demand for, how many rounds would I sell for this particular hour? That is part of our element of dynamic pricing. And then, of course, automating the pricing adjustments and the promotion. This is the man versus the machine. We come across facility managers quite often that are really wrapped up in the process of adjusting their prices, and when we finally break through to them and say, listen, we're talking about adjusting the price for every hour in advance and changing the forecast on every hour that passes, you realize that there are literally hundreds of thousands of computations that are gone through over the course of a year, and thousands upon thousands of price changes, all because this is a living, breathing organism. And so there is no way a man or woman, for that matter, can spend enough time, monitor the T-sheet long enough, make enough price adjustments to compete with the machine. And so that's really another key piece here, is you got to understand that you've got to let us use our formula, let us use our understanding of true demand, let us use our ability to build this tool and automate this tool and plug it into the foreUP T-sheet so that the system can be watching 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and moving the price up or down depending upon the strategy that you choose to employ. So those are our three key drivers for success. Let me further talk about our demand forecasting equation. It is rounds on hand plus expected pickup equals demand forecast. This is a basic concept that every facility manager, every golf course owner, every first assistant, head golf professional who's spent any time or has been responsible for driving green fee revenue at your golf course, this is something that you've internalized, right? How many rounds do I have on the books? What's my expected pickup? And therefore, what is my demand forecast? The first piece, rounds on hand, this is the one you're most familiar with, right? You look at the tee sheet and you ask yourself, gosh, is this good or bad? Is this ahead or behind pace? Am I happy or not? Is my owner, is my wife, is my bank account, how does this look? Is this good or bad? And that is what the golf industry has been grappling with now for quite some time. And I would offer that the industry has been guessing. You know your rounds on hand, you have it right here, but the other part of that equation is expected pickup, right? And so here I am looking at the tee sheet, for a particular few hours of the day. I might be looking at this tee sheet. This might be tomorrow's tee sheet. This might be 2 days from now. This might be a week from now. The question is this good or bad? And you really don't know until you understand the other piece of this equation called the expected pickup, okay? And expected pickup is the same side of the coin as what we would call the booking curve. But if you look at this expected pickup, you know, each column, each bar in this chart represents how many rounds I expect to pick up X amount of days in advance. Now, think about this for a minute. This expected pickup calculation applies to every single hour on your tee sheet. So January 1 at 8 o'clock has a pickup curve, just like June 30th at 2 p.m. has an expected pickup. All of this is based on your historical performance at your golf course. And that is why, let me just take an aside for a minute. This is why it's massively important for you to exhibit and practice excellent tee sheet management practices. You need to put every round of golf on your tee sheet in your tee sheet. You need to check every played round on your tee sheet. You need to cancel every round that doesn't play or cancels or no shows, right? You need to have an accurate historical accounting in your tee sheet to drive this equation, this information that really informs what we would call your demand curve, your booking curve, right? So 0 days in advance, this hour doesn't book any rounds of golf. 6 days in advance, this hour books 2 rounds. 5 days in advance, they get another 2 rounds. 4 days in advance, they get 4 rounds. You can see it all the way up to the day of play, where it typically fills in with the single, right? The different way to look at it is with this sample booking curve for this particular hour that we're looking at, right? This is what it looks like when you stack up all those bookings on top of each other. By the time that day of play comes and goes, you've played 17 rounds. My capacity, is indicated by the dotted red line, is 24 players, right? So, which is a typical 10-minute interval on a 4-ball, on a foursome tee sheet, right? The question becomes, okay, is my demand forecast greater than my historical occupancies? Or is my demand forecast lower than my whole historical occupancies? Am I ahead or am I behind my booking curve, right? That's the question, right? Here it is. Well, guess what? If you got 12 rounds on the books 4 days in advance of the day of play, because here again, my history suggests I should be on that blue line, okay, with 8 rounds. But guess what? I have 12. I've got 4 more rounds booked. What that means is if my exact same pattern occurs over the last 4 days up to the day of play, I'm going to end up with additional rounds on my tee sheet over my historical occupancies. This is an example. See, again, we're not pushing up to 100% occupancy here. All we're doing is we're measuring your forecasted demand against your historical demand, okay? And if you're ahead of your historical demand, you should be pushing your rate up higher. You should be nudging it up higher. And we've got the tools to help this happen automatically. Conversely, if you have those same 12 rounds on your tee sheet, but instead of being 4 days in advance of the day of play, you're 1 day ahead of the day of play, well, guess what? You realize that you're 4 rounds behind pace, okay? And you're going to end up, because we know based on the historical booking curve, we know that you can really only expect 1 round to be booked between tonight and this hour tomorrow morning, right? And you're going to end up behind. The sooner you know whether you're ahead or behind pace, the sooner you can act. And you need to know the order of magnitude too. How far ahead or behind I may be. against my historical demand. And by knowing these numbers and being able to adjust the pricing accordingly, you have the best opportunity to optimize your revenue. Okay, that is, that is our formula for success. Rounds on hand plus expected pickup equals demand forecast. And you take that demand forecast and you compare it to your historical occupancies for those same weeks of the year, those same days of the week, and those same hours of the day, and you know if you're ahead or behind pace. We know that for every hour on your tee sheet. We know it for every hour in advance on your tee sheet, and we can make your prices adjust accordingly against strategies that you approve and you set up. Again, just kind of drilling in on one particular hour of the day, this 2 o'clock hour, you can see that the red line represents the capacity of 28 hours, the 28 players per hour. The blue bar represents how many rounds I currently have on the books, right? Rounds on hand. The gray area of the bar chart represents my historical pickup. How many rounds of golf do I expect to be booked between this moment right now and that hour in the future? And it says I expect 6 more. So it shows my forecasted demand of 29 players, right? Rounds on hand, 23, expected pickup 6 equals forecasted demand as 29 players. It knows also that my historical demand is 12 players. It knows that I am way ahead of pace here. And if you were implementing the automation, this system would know you're ahead of pace very, very early on, and would have been giving you the opportunity to take price increases from a very early stage, right? Let me quickly go through this, and let's shift into this concept of true demand, right? And we talked about this unlimited capacity. And so we start looking at what this sample booking curve looks like when you have a sold out hour. So there's the red line that represents capacity. There's my booking curve that shows that I historically end up at 24 players for this hour. And what's interesting is you see that a day in advance, I had 1 player available, and that filled in on the day of play. So you were able to capture that revenue. Your capacity, your demand met your capacity kind of perfectly. But the other side of the coin is what happens if my hour was sold out 4 days in advance, right? This is this concept of constrained demand, right? So my demand has been capped by the capacity in that particular hour. And if you cannot reaccommodate, move them to an hour earlier or later or whatnot, then you've lost this revenue opportunity to get altogether. And so what this screen looks like is, this blue area is really this thing called unconstrained demand, or what we've called true demand. And that's where demand exceeds capacity. And when we can know this, and this is part of what our proprietary patent pending technology solves for, because that data isn't known in your tee sheet, but we can approximate it, and we can solve for it based on our proprietary algorithms that calculate true demand. And the idea here is that when you look at this 7 days in advance, and you have 4 rounds on the books, Okay, you know that you've got the ability to sell all the future rounds at a higher rate, because again, historically you're on this blue line, then now all of a sudden you're on the dark blue line, and the sooner you know that, you can start taking a price increase with every single additional round book. So many of the static old schemas don't kick in until you reach a certain level of occupancy. And so what our true demand system lets you do is pick up that information, pick up that opportunity, even really before the first round is booked. This is what the price automation looks like on your tee sheet, right? And so on a website with a booking engine, or even through the golf shop on the phone, you can see here that that 9 o'clock hour is trending ahead, and the demand is higher than historical occupancies. And based on the scheme you set up, it's going to take a price increase, and there's how it shows up on the tee sheet. Notice the other hours of the day remain the same. So it's automated, it's 24/7. It shows up through all the channels of your booking, your website, your golf shop, your call center, and it even can get pushed out through the third-party distribution, so your pricing remains consistent across multiple channels. Let's talk a little bit about discounting. I know we only have a couple more minutes here, but really what we're trying to do here with the promotion side of the equation is really focus only on the hours that are behind pace. And we only focus on the hours that are behind pace because for so long and so often, the golf industry has been trying to sell tee times to 100% capacity, and you end up over discounting because your only reference point of what's good or bad is a full tee sheet or not a full tee sheet. And so when you look at an afternoon and you see a couple of hours of blank inventory and you try to put a special together and you hit your database, you know, you're hitting your database with an offer to come out and book a tee time in the afternoon and get a special to do it or whatever it is. But you're really not comparing yourself to your historical utilization. You're comparing yourself to full capacity. And so what you're able to do with our technology and with this equation is you're able to actually only discount against hours that are not performing up to historical demand, okay? And that's a very, very key distinction, that you can control the discount depending on how far behind pace you are. You can control, the discount can change as the rounds fill in, and it will ultimately go away. Because again, the idea here is to know as early as possible if you're ahead or behind pace, and adjust your prices accordingly. And we've got a cool little widget that puts these tee times that need greater promotion, it puts them right on your website. So it builds customer loyalty, it builds traffic to your website, it builds that value proposition for your golfer to say the best prices for my tee times can be found directly on my website. And it gives you the peace of mind to know that the system is monitoring this information for you and adjusting this pricing day in and day out, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's really cool. And the good news is it works. It works. You know, we'll be glad to furnish you with references of your peers to ask them what they think, how they think it works. We've kind of perfected this, or are continuing to perfect this program with a handful of courses in Arizona that consistently outperform the market because of their dogged determination to let this system work for them, and their trust in us to let us help them do it. And you can see here that that those numbers are significant and they mean something. And we appreciate the opportunity to work with you and with all of our clients. And on behalf of our entire team at Sagacity Golf, I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. We thank foreUP for their partnership and their support of our business, and we look forward to working with you soon. So thank you very much, and we will talk to you later. This is Mike Lostelot from Sagacity Golf, signing off.